never in my career have I seen such conflicting information out there about nutrition as I've seen in the last probably 3 to 5 years. Lots of conflicting advice, and a lot of it has to do because of the internet and because a lot of the information that we receive is coming to us from journalists and writers who read complex materials that they don't understand, and or maybe read the abstract and they don't ever read the full study or know what's going on, and information is just thrown out there. And I can tell you an example of that real quick is the term clean eating, which that phrase did not exist 3 or 4 years ago, and now people say it all the time. It is not a word I particularly care for, because clean eating implies to do otherwise would be dirty eating, and that just doesn't make any sense. We've got enough problems in our lives without feeling guilty for the food choices that we make overall. So I just want you to remember that where and when you get your nutrition information is incredibly important to you, and that you can't believe what you read, you can't believe what you see. I encourage you to question me on my references too. I did put some references on here. I looked at things even today, looking at some different things, especially concerning some questions that you all had. So I want to make sure and cover some of that with you too. So I get revved up and then I begin to talk faster, and sometimes I do that. Hey, I know you. I get revved up and I start talking faster, so I'll try to slow it down, but I want to leave time for questions afterwards. And UT plays at 7, so I promised my husband I'd be timely, and I know you guys have to be out of here by 7 as well. So, but good nutrition really does matter, and it doesn't matter now. I mean, it matters lifelong, but it's never mattered more than it matters for you all right now. And the different recommendations are based on different styles of eating, and you can certainly make decisions of eating on a particular style if you want to. But I don't want you to get your information from your neighbor. I don't want you to get it from your yoga teacher. I don't want you to get it from your hairdresser, and I don't want you to get it from your personal trainer. I really don't. I want you to get your information from the National Institute of Health. I want you to get your information from the Mayo Clinic. I want you to get your information from the American Cancer Society, from the Breast Cancer Support Services, from the American Institute for Cancer Research, and from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. If it's not coming from those folks, you need to check into it a little bit more, because a lot of the clinical studies that are out there are funded and paid for by people who are trying to make a particular point. For instance, wait till I talk to you about soy. Those that are for soy, a lot of them are connected somehow to soy manufacturing, and a lot of them that are against soy are those who've been involved with a lot of studies of alternative sources besides soy. So we'll talk about that. But behind every research study is a reason. And you can find probably fairly convincing information from a nutrition perspective for any perspective that you would like to believe. So just keep that in mind with an open mind. I believe in balance in all things, and so I believe that as much as nutrition on anything else. So I've got a mixed feelings too about what they're saying about diet and nutrition as the cause of cancer. Because to me that implies a little bit of guilt and a little bit of it's your own fault, you have the disease, and I'm telling you right now, I don't believe that that is true. I do believe that there's things in our food supply that have changed over the last 20 years that might make the occurrence higher, and it might make it more dangerous, and it might make reoccurrence more. But for people to say that eating this causes cancer, I just think that's not true. My sister-in-law passed away a year ago, May, from breast cancer, and you would never find anybody with a cleaner diet than she has. She didn't smoke, she didn't drink, she exercised regularly, she was a Christian woman with a laid-back attitude, she was a school teacher. There's no reason why it happened to her. I've got a best friend in Nashville who's a runner and is incredibly healthy. She's 52 years old, it literally almost killed her. If she hadn't gotten in the right research study at Vanderbilt, she wouldn't be with us now. So what is that? And of course, you sitting in this room, I'm sure many of you have lived healthy lives all of your life. So just let that go, that there's something that you did from a nutrition perspective or an eating habit that did that. It's not because you ate a hot dog at a ball game. So there you go. On different eating styles, the one that is researched the most and the one that has the greatest amount of validity is the Mediterranean style of eating. And I say style of eating because there's no such thing as a Mediterranean diet. But there's a style of eating that reflects the Mediterranean area and the style in which that culture eats for the most part. And Dr. Andrew Weil and the sources I just gave you earlier, NIH, etc., really support the use of this diet. And again, you get these slides so that you can look at it. I've got the picture of the 3 different ones I'm going to talk about briefly before I move along. But Mediterranean, if you even think about it, it implies a lot of fish, a lot of vegetables, a lot of the healthy fats that are olive oil, using avocados, etc., using fresh fruits, and then not much on red meat at all on the Mediterranean diet. It's really in the smallest amount. That one's pretty well studied and well founded as one to use. The next one is the Japanese food guide, and the Japanese food guide, they have one of the lowest incidence of breast cancer especially, or reoccurrence, and theirs is very highly based in fish and vegetables. Again, there it is, fish and vegetables. They do use grain, and in their culture they use more rice as their grain. In the Mediterranean, they use more pastas and whole wheat products in their idea of grain. But it's basically the same sort of thing, fresh, fish, and vegetables. The next one that's been studied quite a bit is the DASH diet, and that one's been showing up for a lot of different reasons. And I want you to remember that what you're trying to do not only is to keep from having a reoccurrence, but also to feel the best that you can possibly feel today. And that, you know, your motivation is just to feel good, that that's what you want in your life, is to feel good. And the DASH diet, again, it's vegetables is the base of the diet, and then whole grain as much as possible for the choices of grain, a lot of beans, low-fat dairy in small amounts. In the DASH diet, they do use dairy. That one's not used in the Japanese diet, and I'll talk to you about dairy in a minute. And then lots of nuts and seeds and oils. So again, red meat shows up on the top as the one, as the smallest amount and the least used protein product. Other recommendations that are used a lot are the vegan diet, which is really hard to follow. It takes a true commitment and a true understanding about protein sources that you can get. It's doable, but it takes a commitment. You can't just cut meat out of your diet and call yourself a vegetarian, and many people have made that mistake in the past. Vegetarian diet is the other one that's in the current recommendations for recovery. And the vegetarian diet, it has more flexibility, and that one does have soy and dairy in it as a substitute for meat. But what do they all have in common? It's vegetables. It's vegetables. And there's such a neat story that T. Campbell Brown uses in his book called The China Study. He's got a new one out right now called Whole Food that's very good. And he talks about almost the magical property that occurs in vegetables, because vegetables have been radiated by the sun since the eons, and radiation, as we know, causes cell death. How is it that vegetables, when they're out in the sun all this time, actually have a property that's healthy for us? And it's because vegetables have developed a substrate that is an anti-oxidation property to protect it from the sun's radiation. And when we eat the plant, we eat that protection. And we can't get it from any other source but vegetables. So that to me is like, okay, I got it. I don't care if I like my Brussels sprouts, I'm gonna eat them because of that protective factor. So that is one of them that they all have in common. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about food chemistry, because that's where some of the research is going, is that it's the combination of food and it's the synergy that happens in the combining the food that has protective factors too, and things that need to be consumed every day. So something I hear in my office when I say, tell me about your vegetable intake, or tell me how often you eat vegetables, I eat them all the time. And then when I really start asking them, how many servings of vegetables are you eating every day? It might be 1 or 2. And the recommendation is it's more like 5 or 6 servings minimum that you get every day. That's not easy to do. That takes a concerted effort to do carotenoids, which are going to be your orange vegetables, your sweet potatoes, and your carrots. That's a big one. That's vitamin A, and it's showing up in every study that carotenoids are very important to stop reoccurrence of breast cancer and to stop other types of cancers from forming. They're common powerhouses of antioxidants. And remember, an antioxidant is the opposite of oxidation, and oxidation is cell death. That's what rust is cell death. If you cut into an apple and it turns brown, the cells on the outside of the apple have died. That's what aging is cell death. So the more antioxidants we can get in our diet, the better. So, and that's not weekly, that's daily, and that's not just one meal, that's every meal. So it's a lot of berries. It's a lot of strawberries, blueberries, any kind of berry. And it doesn't have to be fresh, they can be frozen. Oftentimes our frozen fruits might be fresher than what we're seeing in the grocery store because they have been sitting in a box in a warehouse and in the back of a truck before they even got to you. So we've got blueberries in our farm in Dayton, and it just makes me so happy to get those fresh blueberries. But, you know, I might go ahead and pick up a bag of frozen ones because they do flash freeze them on site. Don't be afraid to do that. And then another powerful antioxidant is coming from citrus, and that's coming from oranges and lemons and grapefruit. And again, you know, you have to look at your medications to make sure you don't have a reaction with your medicines with grapefruit, but that's real important. Another one, and this is a slide I added this year, is using flaxseed and chia seed, which are really, really good sources of omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3 fatty acids are not only good for heart and not only good in helping good cell growth and making the cells more able to be antioxidant in their structure, but they're really good for your brain. And if you're over the age of 40, you've already begun to notice that there's a little difference that occurs in your brain. And if you've been through chemo, you know that there's a difference in your brain. My girlfriend that I was referring to earlier calls it chemo brain. And it's important that you think about that, and that nutrition really does matter as far as brain function is concerned. So, and on flaxseed, as I go into some detail about how to put some of these things together, I'll talk about flaxseed again because there was a question that came up about that and how to cook it and prepare it. Another one is turmeric. Turmeric is one that we didn't hear about a few years ago, but it's showing up everywhere. Turmeric can be used in so many different ways, but it's not only an antioxidant, and I've made it clear what we mean by that, but it's also anti-inflammatory. So something that's anti-inflammatory means in those joints and on the inside of your red blood vessels, we want everything moving clearly. We don't want any sludge. We don't want anything slowing down. And turmeric and ginger both can help with anti-inflammation, which is important. Okay? All right. Brad, I want to talk to you about cooking methods and food sources of these vegetables and fish. And that was the question someone asked, is what about sources of fish? So here's what I want you to consider. Because we live in such a dieting, organic, non-GMO, clean eating world, you could really drive yourself crazy trying to eat perfect. And it's scary to think about what choices are out there and what choices you're supposed to make. I mean, when you go to the grocery store, there's 20 different types of spinach. Baby spinach, full-grown spinach, spinach mixed with kale, spinach in bags, spinach in boxes, organic spinach, spinach that's been spinned and washed 3 times. Which one are you supposed to buy? It's very, very tricky to try to stand there and think, what should I do? So I want you just from a personal perspective to look at your own life, look at your heritage, look at your genetic background, look at your bio-nutritional background, whatever your family genetics involved, and let that kind of guide you how clean you need to make your diet. Because fish is really important to you. It's very important to all of us, but what type of fish should you be getting? If you have the funds and you have the wherewithal, I think you should look at the source of our fish, because a lot of the fish that we get in our country in the grocery store is coming from either the South China Sea or it's coming from very polluted waters in the Asian waterways. They have a high level of pollution in their waterways. You know, personally for me, I look at the back of the packaging to see where the shrimp is coming from. And if it's coming from China, I usually won't buy it. And when I'm in a restaurant and I'm ordering shrimp, I might ask them, do you know where this shrimp comes from? And of course the waitress has no clue, but the chef does, and it happens to be important to me. Now someone else could care less. It's not important to them. They just know that they need to eat fish. So I'm not going to stand up here and tell you, you cannot eat fish that comes from these areas, but just be aware that deep water fish that live for a long period of time do ingest the waters in the areas of where they're located. So that would be one that I might consider looking at on which kind that you get. Tilapia is another one. Tilapia is a very popular fish pushed on us by social media because it's a low-fat white fish that tastes like chicken. But tilapia, in fact, has a lot of toxins in the waterways where it's captured. So with tilapia, I would do the same thing. I would look to where it's caught. And if it's coming from Peru in the South American areas, that's usually a little bit healthier fish. But again, if it's tilapia is coming from the South China Sea or any of those areas, I wouldn't eat it. It's a bottom feeder fish, tilapia is. So, I mean, haven't you heard that tilapia is like one of the best fishes that you can eat? It's because we're being sold that. It's easy to harvest and it's showing up in our grocery stores, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the healthiest. Will it make you sick? No, it won't make you sick. Should you eliminate it from your diet? Not necessarily, if it's something that you like. It's the consistent pattern of what you're eating over and over and over a lifetime that makes an impact. Another one that's debatable is salmon. Salmon is a wonderful fish that's full of the omega-3 fatty acids. Salmon in our country now is being grown in ponds where they feed it corn. It's like corn-fed beef in a way. They make them grow really fast and they put dyes in the water. So when you go to Walmart and you look at fresh salmon, on the label, on the print, it will say, contains a solution 15% of dye for preserving flavor and color. What? I'd rather have fish that maybe is not quite as pretty and pink if it was a healthy salmon. That's another question I ask when I go in a restaurant. Is this wild-caught salmon? Salmon should be expensive because there's only so much salmon in the world. So when you see salmon and the price is really low, most likely it's a farmed salmon product. And again, there's a part of me in the back of my head that doesn't want to tell you that because I don't want you to become obsessed with thinking, oh my gosh, I can't eat that. I love salmon, but the only salmon we got was from Walmart and it had dyes in it and I'm not going to eat it anymore. Don't do that. Use this as information so that you can glean out the parts that seem important to you and the parts that don't. Because everybody's story is going to be a little bit different here. And I'm going to make every one of you pinky swear before you leave, you're not going to become obsessed with this. That you just take it as information that you can process and decide what's the best choice for you. Another one is the green vegetables. There is a punch that comes from crunch That means our vegetables don't need to be overcooked. My mother thought that you should be able to cut vegetables with a plastic fork. She wanted it really sawed down. And I think all of us know now that we've got to be able to have our vegetables somewhat firm in order for them to retain their nutrient content. But there are plenty of studies out there that say that you probably should not eat raw vegetables unless you are perfectly confident that there's no pesticide residue and not a possibility of any microorganism being in that vegetable. And it's considered that broccoli is one of them that we should not eat raw. You barely blanch it if you want to and eat it. And I did say blanch because I'm from Iowa originally and I can't seem to shake that one. But don't overcook. Just slightly cook your vegetables. But broccoli, kale, collards, turnip greens, cabbage, any of those are awesome. And I suggest, this is one of those things I really do highly recommend. You build your plate on these vegetables and then have your fish as a side dish, your salmon as a side dish, whatever else you decide to have. But when you're thinking about what you're going to have for dinner, think, we're going to have Swiss chard tonight, and with that we're going to have some chicken. Or we're going to have a nice big serving of collards tonight, and we're going to have sweet potato and a little bit of salmon. So have that be the main part of what you're eating, is to make sure that you're getting those vegetables. When you chew vegetables, you've got to chew them very, very well because there's a release of a type of phytochemical, and let me see if I can say it right, dinomethionine, that helps release the nutrients of other foods in your body. So chewing well helps release the nutrients. If you eat fast or you don't hardly chew, you're going to miss out on some of the nutrients that you get in your stomach because, the hydrochloric acid of your stomach, when it starts breaking it down, sometimes can start breaking down the nutrients in the vegetable that you just ate. The new one that's on the list that everybody's talking about is Swiss chard. It's the red vein in the Swiss chard. It's just awesome. I think it's taken kale off the headliner list and moved kale down, and now it's Swiss chard. So that's a fun one. It tastes good. It's one to play with. You could eat it raw. You can steam it. You can blanch it for a minute, and it can make a big difference. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about flax, flaxseed. There's two ways to eat it. You can buy it in most grocery stores now in the produce section in a container. There's black flax and then there's golden flax. And I've quoted this, so I'm going to read this to you, and you can obviously look at the site later. Flax holds promise in preventing cancer and slowing progression and may help with reoccurrence. The antioxidation activity of lignin, and that's what flaxseed is, has been noted as a potential factor with cancer prevention. Lignins have phytoestrogen in them that actually protect against cancer, and the fatty acid profile content of flax makes it attractive to researchers as a very potential anti-cancer food. Now let me tell you what I do with flax. It drives my husband crazy. You can get milled flax, which is ground, and you can use it in your flour when you're doing any kind of baking, or honest to goodness, you can help flour up something if you're going to do like a pan sauteed okra or something and you wanted to bread it. So you can use it as a flour source mixed with other flour sources. So having it milled, floured, and then you can mix it in smoothies, etc. You can also use the flax seed, which is not going to break down as much because it stays in that seed form as it travels through your intestines, but it does break down some, and it's a wonderful source of fiber for your body. So I take flaxseed and I put them in my nut butters, whether it's almond butter or peanut butter. I dump a quarter cup of flaxseed and stir it in there. I do it with chia seed. I might do sesame seed and other seeds too, and make a piece of toast, and I've got this lovely seeded nut butter that I put on it, and it tastes really good, and it's good and crunchy, so it's like a powerhouse of antioxidants that you can have on toast. The first time I put it on my husband's toast, he just looked at it like, Pam, what have you done to my peanut butter? I made it really crunchy. So it's a great delivery system when you're trying to find different ways that you could get flax in your diet. But it does have potential. So can you see the difference of what I'm doing between giving you a suggestion of something we know versus something I'm saying, you need to do this, right? So flaxseed, you need to do this. You need to put it in. The other one that's come up that's really important, that I've been studying this a lot in the last year or two, is pre and probiotics. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard, and you've seen it on your yogurt container and different things about the good, important, beneficial bacteria that's produced in our gut when we have plenty of pre and probiotics on board. But understand this, your gut is a universe unto itself. And if you have had health problems due to either chemotherapy or radiation, or just your appetite being gone down for so long, it's really important that you look to your intestines to make sure that you get them taken care of. In your intestines is where we make B vitamins. This is important. So if you're taking a multivitamin, a B vitamin, and you've got a gut that's not healthy, it's very hard to utilize that B vitamin that you've ingested, and it's very hard to synthesize B vitamins in your intestines when it's not healthy. There's a lot of beneficial reasons to take a probiotic, and those are the ones that you've probably seen in the store. There's several different varieties that you can try, but I've got a little infographic on here talking about the mechanisms of pre and probiotics in the diet to promote gut health. In your gut is where we make most of the serotonin. So the serotonin is actually produced and manufactured in the gut, goes up your spinal column and goes into the brain for utilization. So if you've suffered from depression or you feel depressed, believe it or not, we're starting to look at your gut and see how healthy that is. And that's something that certainly wasn't done even 5 years ago. Fascinating studies going on that. So keep your ears and eyes open on that. So apple cider vinegar is a probiotic because it is fermented. So any kind of fermented food is really good for you. So kefir, which is a type of yogurt, kind of drinkable yogurt is what I always think of it as. Kefir is super, super good for you. So is kimchi, miso soup, pickled products like pickled beets or pickled anything is really a good thing for you to have in your diet every day, not just a sometime thing, but that this is one of those things that you include in your repertoire every day. And of course, yogurt, which is the one we know about. There's actually twice as much cell activity going on in your intestines than there is in the rest of your body. So why wouldn't we be thinking about how we can make that healthier at this point? You grab my glasses. I always act like I can see till I just simply can't. Okay, laid end to end, the bacteria in your gut would circle the earth 2.5 times. There's that much, and think about your intestines being like a garden hose in the center of your body. It really deserves our full attention. So that's one that I would say, do that. The next one is green tea. Green tea is not the kind that comes from Lipton or Arizona in a bottle. Green tea is green tea, and you can get it in the little envelopes, but the best way to get green tea is in powdered form, and you get one of the neat little balls where you can make your tea. You can have it iced, you can have it cool, you can have it hot. The most potent form of green tea does come from Asia and the Japanese countries, and it does kind of interest me that their pyramid, their food style, includes a lot of green tea. You simply would not make a mistake at all if you included that in your repertoire of something that you do every single day. is using tea. And I'll mention this again. I said that about salmon is going to be expensive. So's tea. A good tea is going to cost you, it could be $8, $10 for a really good tea. But the epiphany that you find is that you need so much less of it. So you might have, sticker shock when you see that you've spent this much for a container of tea, but you use so much less of it than you would if you were doing the other teas. And if you've ever priced Lipton bottled tea or some of the others, in the long run, it's certainly less expensive than that. But I do want you to know that a good green tea is not inexpensive. Wine, the resveratrol that comes from the skin of the grape is a cancer-preventing and an antioxidant that is used for heart disease, for brain function, for everything. But the key is the moderation point, and I think that was one of the questions that came up is, can you drink alcohol? Is it okay, and how much? Moderation is 1 5-ounce glass of wine. And it's, that makes me sad because I like 2. But it's 1 5-ounce glass of wine is considered moderation. And we have to watch that because the benefits of wine drinking is incredibly high with that 1 glass. And then the benefits drop down and it becomes a detriment when you have 2 glasses or certainly more than that. So it's very much titrated to 1 serving of wine. And men is 2 servings, women it's 1 serving. And it's just the way that we process things in our liver, and our body doesn't like alcohol. You can also use grape juice if you didn't want to use alcohol, but there's something about that moderation piece where you allow yourself to have it. It also decreases stress, and it also might make dinner a little bit more pleasant if your appetite's not really good. So if you enjoy red wine, I would consider continuing it. Now, there are benefits with white wine and other alcohol sources, again in that moderate 1 drink source, but the one that has the protective factor that they're connecting with cancer is red wine. Yeah.
When you say 1 5-ounce glass a week?
A day. Yeah. I'd be real sad if it was just once a week. If I'm only going to have 1 glass, she wins. Folate, folic acid, and B9 is a very complex relationship, and I talked about this once before. But if you have low levels of folate, you do have a higher rate of cancer. There's some interesting studies out there. I mean, folic acid, think foliage. Folic acid is found in all things green, and it's incredibly important to us. But there's a tipping point in folate. So I encourage you to take it from food, not from supplement. And to let your doctor know and maybe research that a little bit yourself. It's very complex about using folic acid. There's a supplement of real high levels of folic acid that are used for depression. The name of it escapes me at the moment, but it'll come to me. But just pay attention to that on folate. Get it from foliage. The next one is vitamin D. Everybody talks about vitamin D now, and they check vitamin D levels. Vitamin D enhances the immune system, which you definitely want to do. Vitamin D also helps the aid of getting calcium in your bone, which you want to do. And vitamin D is known to be an anti-inflammatory property. So the thing about vitamin D, why didn't they find this 20 years ago? I can't help but think it's because we're indoors more and we wear sunscreen. I think that might have had something to do with it. And we still wear tons of sunscreen, and we still stay indoors. So your doctor might give you a recommendation for how much vitamin D you need, but certainly 1,000 international units is not the least bit extreme. I take more than that myself. So, but vitamin D is a proto-hormone, and it does reduce the risk of reoccurrence of breast cancer. Plenty of studies to show that out. And listen to some of the sources from food that you can get vitamin D. Sardines, mackerel, mushrooms, and eggs. Mushrooms, especially the the bella mushrooms, the big bella mushrooms, is a very high source of vitamin D. Interesting, and they glow in the dark, so that kind of blows the idea of the importance of sunshine, but mushrooms are a great source of vitamin D, as is sardines. And if you can handle sardines, that is a powerhouse food. That is a good one. Does anybody in here eat sardines? Oh gosh, they're so good for you. I have them in my office and challenge clients with me sometimes to eat sardines on crackers. It's not that much different than tuna. This is interesting. This is something new I added that has come out. Half of cancer survivors disagree that fruit and vegetables are important to survival. Half. Maybe that might be one reason why some people go, you know, diet doesn't have anything to do with this. This was preordained or this was genetic or whatever, but I find it interesting that half of cancer survivors do not think that fruit and vegetables are important. And I've got some beautiful pictures of fruits and vegetables, but just take my word for it. A third of survivors do not believe that exercise affects reoccurrence. A third. And let me tell you, it does. Today, when I was doing the last check on some of the new things coming out, exercise is incredibly important because exercise on so many levels, from a primal perspective, when you're able to move and you need to exercise, that means all systems are go. That means the system is working, that you can go out and chase food and you can protect your tribe or you can do whatever you need to do. That is a signal that the body needs to keep itself healthy. If you're not exercising and you're sitting and you're not able to move, the body thinks something's terribly wrong, and it does prepare that it's going to just sit down and stay down. So lifting weights, walking, taking Zumba classes, yoga classes, hiking, biking, whatever you can do, it is absolutely clear in everything that I looked at that exercise is incredibly important to you. That's really hard to do when you don't feel well. It's a habit that you might break when you've been sick and you've been forced not to exercise, but when you can do it, you need to do it. And if it means that you only do it 10 minutes and you do it 3 times a day, then that's what you have to do. If it means using 1-pound weights that you use, and then, you know, an hour later you do weights for a minute, and then another hour later you do weights for a minute, do it. Whatever it takes, because there is something in the primal wiring of our brain that knows that you're okay if you're able to move and exercise. And you can take that one to the bank. Oh, I got a great picture of a dog with a basketball in his mouth. So estrogen is lowered by exercise. And conversely, some of my folks I work with that over-exercise, I tell them, you are burning through your estrogen. You're over-exercising. And you see a look of certain people that they're kind of, they look like they burn through their estrogen. People that do a lot of, they overrun and over-exercise, they have kind of that gaunt, dry look about them. They're burning through their estrogen. But for people who are survivors, you want exercise to burn estrogen. And I'm not suggesting at all that you over-exercise, just that you understand it's that much of a relevant point to be made, that it might, estrogen, as you know, may proliferate tumor. If we've got something that we know lowers estrogen, then that's certainly something that we need to take seriously. All right, I told you that oxidation is cell death, and it is, and cellular damage is a result of oxidation. Some of the causes of oxidation they're saying now is eating processed food, and it's because there's so many chemicals in processed food that the nutrient content isn't really there, and so your body is forced to digest and process and eliminate a food that didn't really have a benefit in it. And that increases the body's need to have to try to oxidize the stuff. So a lot of processed food needs to be considered as something that you want to limit. Now the truth is, water is processed, is it not? So you take it with a grain of salt that you can't eliminate every processed food in your life. I mean, there's other things to do in life than to do that, but it is important for you to consider how much of it. And it might be that you're careful about the crackers and the chips and cheese and crackers and things that come packaged. Obviously, smoking and lack of sleep increases oxidation, and so does stress. Stress is a major part of my life, and I'm sure a part of your life too. So doing yoga and meditation and deep breathing and anything that you can do to let it go is incredibly important to you. There's some studies about very traumatic, stressful points in your life, and then how many years after that did you develop cancer. So it's very interesting about that and about how we use stress and how we feel when we're stressed. You know, a few years ago, if my PowerPoint was up and it didn't work, I would be stressed. I'm not the least bit stressed. You know, it's nothing. But think about that. Stress increases oxidation, and oxidation increases cellular damage. It is 6:52, so we've got 8 minutes. I can do this one of two ways. I can keep going, or I can stop and answer questions. Which way would you keep going? Keep going. Okay. So, one of the things we know now, thank you for that. Love somebody that can make a decision. One of the things that's really important is that we watch your weight. And it's an interesting dichotomy because when you're a survivor, things matter more than they might have in the past. And whether you weigh 10 or 15 pounds more should not matter at all. But what does matter is the amount of fat that stays in your body, because fat can be a kind of a toxic holding gland for toxins. So using 3 meals and then a couple of snacks a day can be really helpful, or doing 6 small meals can be really helpful. Having a meal plan that you kind of stick to on a consistent basis, because the more consistent you are with what you do, the more your body knows how to handle what you do. So, you know, it's just like with the vegetables. If you've not been eating them, I'm not asking you to become vegetarian tomorrow. It'll give you a terrible stomach ache. What I'm suggesting is maybe you start increasing by 1 or 2 servings every day until you get your servings up to 6 to 7 servings a day of vegetables. On weekends, you know, make your recipes ahead of time and batch cook so it doesn't stress you out too much to have those. Make a plan and commit to it. I mean, it's why food isn't a priority in our lives amazes me. I mean, it's certainly judged and moralized, but I don't know that it's really considered like one of the most important things we do, but it is. So building a super food pantry is really important. When you look at things, consider, what is this food giving to me? Does it have calcium? Does it have vitamin D? Does it have zinc? Does it have iron? Does it have chromium? Does it have B6? Does it have enough protein? Does it have fiber? I mean, really look at it. The next one on my slide here is talking about fluids. Water's the best thing for you to drink. The recommendation now is that it's half your body weight in ounces of water. So I'm about 120 pounds, that's 60 ounces of water. If you're 200 pounds, that's 100 ounces of water. I always wondered, how can everybody need the same 8 cups of water a day if you're 6'2" or 5'2"? So just remember that if you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. It helps metabolic processes in your body if you're well hydrated. Incredibly important. Take water breaks and make sure you're getting enough, and it's real good to keep your system good and cleaned up. And your urinary tract actually works better if you have to urinate a lot, because the muscle is used more, so really important. And then carry a personal water bottle or something with you always so that you've got water supply on hand. I'm going to shift and talk about fats for just a minute. The only time you'll hear me say really good and bad is about fats. We need fats because our brain is made of fat. It's incredibly important to satiety. It has the omega-3 fatty acids in fat, but high-fat diets are associated with being overweight and high body fat percent. And I just said that high body fat is metabolically active, and we don't want metabolically active fat on our body more than necessary. It's the animal fats that we watch. If you notice in the Mediterranean and the Asian, in the DASH diet, they're very, very low in animal fat and in rich creamy desserts and whole milk. An exception that we're seeing now is in eggs. Somebody asked about choline. It's the source of that is in egg yolk. It's 150 milligrams of choline in egg. Really good. Lots of good studies about that as a supplement. You can overdo it though. I think liver is the highest source of choline in the diet, so use that. It's a good anti-cancer food product for you to use. If you want to have eggs every day, you can. Tropical oils, the one that's being debated now is coconut oil. It is a tropical saturated fat, but it becomes liquid almost immediately. So there's debate about whether or not we should use it. So think about this. If you have weight issues, I'd stay away from it. If you don't have weight issues and you want to use it, include that in your diet. Let the fact of your own percentage of body weight decide whether or not you should do coconut oil. So avocado, olives, olive oil, flaxseed, which we just talked about. Plant oils are helpful, like grapeseed oil. There's essential plant oils that we get from like lemon oil and lemon balm and citrus balm that have a lot of potential too, that you can use it with cooking too. We already talked about fish. You need protein to protect your muscles. All right, let's talk about soy before we run out of time. And sugar, those two things. I'll do sugar first so it's on here. My sister-in-law, before she passed away, completely eliminated sugar out of her diet, completely. And I mean, to the point she was afraid of sugar. If you made lemonade or tea or anything, she'd be like, does that have sugar in it? She was very, very afraid of sugar. Her breast cancer was very aggressive. It certainly didn't save her life to completely stay away from sugar. There are studies that say we need to limit sugar, but all carbohydrate turns to glucose in your bloodstream. So even if you never, ever consumed anything with any kind of sugar in it, your body will still create glucose in your bloodstream. Let's look at it this way. Let's stay away from high fructose corn syrup, and let's stay away from a lot of sugar-added products, except for every once in a while when you want it, like on your birthday, you know, or on your grandchild's birthday or whatever. But for the most part, be careful about that. Go ahead.
Can I ask how you feel about soy milk?
I'm getting to soy right now. Yeah, I'm gonna do that one next. So on sugar, you will read a lot of things that you need to be on a completely sugar-free diet, but that would imply fruit-free, dairy-free, vegetable-free. You'd be free from any product that had any kind of OS in it, an OSE. Yeah.
How about stevia and other products that have been claiming to have no calories? Is it
Okay,
sugar?
on sugar substitutes, try to choose one that doesn't have a lot of chemical processing. And the one that's most recommended right now is stevia. It was used in Japan for years before it came to the United States, and it used to be only in health food stores. It is used now in a lot of products. There's some urban ideas that maybe Splenda, NutraSweet, that those are sucralose, that those are ones to stay away from. So I think it depends on how much of it you use. If you use it in your coffee and in your tea and you do sugar-free yogurt, you do a lot of, you might be getting too much. But if it's just a packet here and there, let it go. Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions of what you can do to not have so much sugar cravings?
Yeah, you need to call me in the
Yeah.
morning. Sugar
is-
cravings are
any
really,
suggestions?
really, really tough. I mean, they're really tough, but that's such a multi-layered thing. It really is, and I encourage you, call me on the phone and I'll talk to you about it for a minute, because there's emotions, there's hormones, there's so many things underlying sugar. And dark chocolate's good for you, so if you can make it work and do just a piece of dark chocolate, that's the good one to do. Okay, let me get to soy. Food first before pills, always, because we know what you absorb and we know how the synergy works with food. You know, don't take garlic pills and turmeric pills. Cook with garlic and use turmeric. Try your best to incorporate the real thing. Then use a supplement behind that when you have to. You know, except for vitamin D, which I think we all need to supplement, and fish oil, which I think we need to supplement. But, you know, not necessarily calcium if you have enough of it in your diet, not necessarily a B vitamin if you have it in your diet. I got a whole thing on emotion and eating. So, anyway,
Give a website.
I gotta go to soy. Okay, oy vey. And I quoted this so you would have what I read. Current evidence suggests that a diet high in soy might actually improve survival and lower the risk of reoccurrence in women with breast cancer. The benefits do not appear limited to just Asian populations. And that's why they started all those studies, because how is it that soy is so bad for us? Because it's a phytoestrogen, and yet there's an entire culture with a lower cancer level that uses soy all the time. There's plenty of long-term studies that show Asian and Western countries that women who ate 10 milligrams of soy per day after breast cancer had a lower risk of reoccurrence. There is just a split right down the middle of the road. I could get on that line, because there are some that say it's not worth the risk, stay away from soy, and others that say, you know, new research comes out all the time, and that's simply not the case. So you're gonna have to take that one. You know, I was raised in my field that we don't do soy. I don't do soy. Here's another one. Soy is considered safe. This comes from Vanderbilt University. It's associated with lower mortality and reoccurrence among breast cancer patients. Association with mortality appears to follow a dose response. So if you eat tons of soy, it's not going to help you any better. And reoccurrence were observed with only real high intake of soy foods. So,
Is
you
this
know,
processed soy or lactate?
they did not differentiate, but my take on it would be soy isolate that you see in all foods, but using edamame and tempeh and tofu seem to be a reasonable addition to your diet, especially if you're vegetarian. I've got the authors' names cited on this so that you can look at it yourself. Question? Yeah.
I know you're talking about soy, but I just want to ask you, how about honey?
Okay, honey is metabolized in the body like sugar, so it has the same effect on blood sugar as anything else. And so does agave, by the way, which a lot of people started spending $8 for a bottle of agave. You know, that's still fructose, it's still sugar in your body. So there's some that say natural sourced pollen and like true bee pollen that you can get, and those lovely combs is actually have a protective factor because it's really high in B vitamins. But just your jar of Subi honey from the grocery store, it doesn't have.
I know you, but I know the one with the comb in it is a whole lot better.
It's a whole lot better. It's a whole lot better. That's a moderation in all things thing for sure. Yeah.
What about the ones that it says it's honey from local, from your area, where the bees are, you know, from your area, like I know you get it.
It's not gonna, to me, that would be one of those things you do because you enjoy it and you feel like that might be something that you feel, you know, they talk about it with seasonal allergies. I don't know if any of you know Mark Cromie from the Allergy Center. He's on all his commercials and such. He and I almost went in a fist fight about that because there's a lot that say that if you suffer from seasonal allergies and you eat honey from your area, it helps with allergies. I know that's true because it helps my husband. And he said, no way, it doesn't help. I was like, well, it helps my husband. Placebo effect, okay? And that was kind of the main thing I wanted to express, is that you can get incredibly depressed and stressed and anxious based on whether or not you should or shouldn't eat a particular food. And you cannot live your life that way. You can't do it. But what you can do is make nutrition one of the more important things in your life that you really give attention to and pay attention to. If anybody needs to do that, you all need to do it. All of us do. And the recommendations for you are really no different than I would give myself or anybody else. It's really healthy living style. That's what it's about, wholesome living style. It's just that you guys need to do it more than maybe the guy down the block, okay? All right, it is 7:06, so, and I know we have to close up, so.
Bring a grape juice when you talk about if we don't drink alcohol.
You anyone is fine. She's asked about grape juice, any kind is fine. You can pick.
Welch's, or are you talking
Well,
about?
a lot of them have more added sugar to
Right.
them. Grape juice typically has a high sugar content, and a serving is a third of a cup of grape juice. So there's a couple brands, I can see the label in my head, they're usually on the top shelf. It costs twice as much as Welch's, it's probably a better one.
Fish markets,
Yes,
we have, you know, the Publix, the Milo's, and the blah, 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 and there are some good ones. But I'm looking for real fish markets. Are there any in this town? Does anybody here know?
well, if you're gonna buy fish here, we don't live on the coast.
Right.
So I think it should be frozen, because a lot of the fish you're seeing out displayed has already been thawed out. It was frozen and they thawed it out. I just as soon thaw it out myself, you know? I mean, we don't live on the coast. So we were at the beach a month or so ago and we bought shrimp. And, you know, we always ask that question, is this Gulf shrimp? And it wasn't Gulf shrimp, and it was in Publix in Destin, and it came from the northeast coast, which tells me they thawed it out. It was frozen and they thawed it. So, yeah, okay, yeah.
It just occurred to me if Asian women have a diet high in fish and that benefits them, why should we be afraid of eating fish from Asian waters? That's what they're eating.
Well, it's the South China Sea for the most part, and it's just the levels that are so high in toxins. I don't know what we're gonna find out about Asian fish over time. But that's a valid point.
Oh, I think the waters all through Asia are horrendous.
Yeah,
But-
maybe
but-
in their gut, and this is a guess on my
Yeah.
part, maybe because their gut flora is used to eating that particular fish, and as part of their lifestyle, they've adapted to eating it. That's the only thing that would make sense to me, yeah.
Do you believe that a calorie is a calorie or some calories different from other calories?
You have just asked me something that we could talk about all day, but I can quickly give you just my opinion on that, and it would be no. I think, you know, from a physics perspective, it's the same, but from the way our body utilizes it, I would say that's not true. Yeah, do you believe that as well?
I was raised believing in calories and calories, so it's hard for me to switch, but that seems to be what I'm hearing.
Yeah, which is an ongoing learning process, it has to be that way. One more, and then my husband's getting mad at me for being late.
You have a private practice, and where is it?
Yes, ma'am. I'm over on the north side of town on Hanover. I call it Hanover House. I've got my practice in a cute little old house over there, and I see patients privately there.
Do you have cars?
I've got a few, but Tanya can certainly give you my information. So, or you can find me online. It's real easy to find me. I'm Chattanooga Boot Coach. If you Google my name, I come up pretty quick. So,
Chattanooga.
ChattanoogaBootCoach.com.